Hello, and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are having our monthly check-in with Colorado Workforce Development Council. So I have Senior Communications Strategist in studio with me, Britta Blodgett. How are you, Britta?
I'm doing well. How are you, Alex?
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, as always.
Yes, definitely. So we were just talking. We had a great show last month with you guys talking about all of the different state agencies that come together. So the Department of Labor, the Department of Higher Education, and OEDIT, and how they all work with you, CWDC. And it was a really informative show. I really enjoyed that. But you always bring me great guests, so I have no doubt that this will be just as informative and fun for this show. We are focusing on rural Colorado, which is, I think, a little bit forgotten sometimes in the Metro Denver area. We focus on ourselves in the Front Range here, but obviously the rural community plays a large part in workforce development. And they have some unique issues and things that we got to work out, so I'm excited to talk about that today. In the meantime, what else is going on this month?
We are excited for a show, and I think we have some great guests today. We also have Economic Development Week coming up next week, May 6th through the 11th, and it's really highlighting the impact of economic development on our communities, and the Economic Development of Council of Colorado is doing work around that, so you can check out their website to learn more, edcconline.org. Also, OEDIT as well, which their website is choosecolorado.com. And so I think that will be an exciting week to celebrate economic development in Colorado, but actually it's across the country. And even last year in 2018, there were more than 250 communities in the United States and Canada that celebrated Economic Development Week. So,
which is exciting. I don't think that's something that I would have ever considered celebrating, but it's a huge part of everyone's economy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We also have the Global Minded Conference is coming up June 5th to 7th, and that will be in Denver. And Global Minded really works to help first generation and underrepresented college students achieve career success. So I think that will be a great conference that the CWDC and our other partners will be participating in. And we also have been having TalentFOUND quarterly conversations. So we had the first series of these in February, and we talked with workforce development, economic development, and chambers of commerce about what are examples of partnerships that are going well, how might we continue to enhance our partnerships, and coming up in the end of this month and in June, we'll be having another quarterly conversation with workforce development and the community colleges. So we're excited about that as well, and it's great opportunity to learn about the ways that strong partnerships are helping drive Colorado.
Awesome.
So I'd also like to introduce our guests now, or rather, actually, I'd like to let them introduce themselves. So can we start with Dawn? Would you share a little bit about yourself and your background, please?
Sure. My name is Dawn Robards, and I'm the Sub-Area Director for the Eastern Workforce Centers, and I cover the 10 counties in northeastern Colorado. My background is I've been with the state almost 21 years, and about 18 of those have been in workforce development. So everything from a case manager with Denver County up on through a couple urban systems, and then I've been out in rural now almost 9 years.
Wonderful. Thank you. We're glad to have you here with us today. Laura, would you be able to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Laura Marchino, and I'm the Executive Director of the Region 9 Economic Development District in Southwest Colorado. And I'm really glad you asked a little bit about my background, because I actually got my degree, and my first career was in broadcast journalism, and I worked for a PBS station in New Mexico. And I transitioned into economic development, and I feel like it serves you well. You have to be politically a generalist, and so I'm happy today.
Wonderful. That's fascinating. That's great. Thank you so much for joining us. And we also have Clarke here with us in the studio.
Good. Thanks, Britta. Yes, I'm Clarke Becker, and I get to be director of the Colorado Rural Workforce Consortium. So I get to work very closely with Don Robards, and over the years, Laura and I have had a chance to work closely together on a number of things as well. But I have been director of the consortium now for 8 years. Matter of fact, on the 1st of May was officially today, I guess, but I was offered on April 15th to move over. But I taught high school for 8 years out of college. And I think being a teacher and a coach is still a lot about how I'm wired and the things that I get to do. But by profession, really economic development for over 25 years now. And so I have real passion, and any chance I get to talk about my friends in rural Colorado, I'm all over it, as you well know, Britta. So I look forward to that. Also, I think another asset to the work that I get to do, I had the privilege to serve in local government for 17 years. So I got to be the mayor of Woodland Park, and I was a Teller County commissioner. So those two roles served me very well as I work with our elected officials and our communities all over rural Colorado.
Great. Thank you, Clarke. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the Colorado Rural Workforce Consortium does and who it serves?
Sure. Colorado, of course, is broken into 10 federally recognized areas. 8 of them are Front Range urban areas, with Mesa County on the other side of the state. The remaining 51 of the 64 counties belong in the Rural Workforce Consortium. Defensively, 49 of those are rural. Pueblo and Broomfield are also part of the consortium, so we won't get into the discussion there. Fortunately, we have a terrific relationship, and I'm going to touch on, maybe have a chance to talk a little bit about what's going on in Pueblo a little bit later. But we're a business-focused workforce partnership. We are all about the partnerships, because one of the things that I preach to my team all the time, I was actually and Laura, I was down in Durango for an economic development conference just about 8 years ago, and I heard a presentation on what would Google do, and the guy would say, well, Google does this, and he'd relate it to economic development. And he got about halfway through, and he said, Google, they do what they do best, and they link to the rest. So if I sum up what the consortium does, is we try to do what we do best, and then work with our partners to do the rest. So partnership and focus on business is really what our key is.
Great, thank you. Laura, could you talk a little bit about what the Region 9 Economic Development District does and who you serve?
So we are in the southwest corner of the state. We cover 5 counties, the 10 cities and towns in those counties, and we're home to Colorado's only 2 Indian tribes. And we're far, far away from the Front Range. It takes us 7 hours by car. Our largest job sector is outdoor recreation. We're home to Mesa Verde National Park. We have 4 national monuments, the Durango Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad. So it's a beautiful area of the state. And what we do as an economic development district is we really try to facilitate state and federal funding to our local governments as well as to our county level economic development groups. So we do a lot of leveraging resources, capacity building. We run a business loan fund for startups that are not bankable till they have a 2-year track record. We also do loans for higher risk businesses. We also are a state data affiliate, so we work with state demographer on data and trying to make sure people have good information to make good decisions. And then probably most important is we work closely with our industry sectors, including education, including our economic development groups, to really try to improve economic conditions.
Wonderful, thank you. And Dawn, can you share a little bit about the Eastern Workforce Region?
Yes, the Eastern Workforce sub-area covers the 10 counties in northeast Colorado. So we've got Logan, Morgan, Sedgwick, Phillips, Washington, Yuma, Kit Carson, Cheyenne, Lincoln, and Elbert counties. And we offer 6 offices. Within those 10 counties, we do outreach to the remaining 4 offices that don't, or the counties that don't have a brick and mortar office in them. And the theme I'm hearing already between Clarke and Laura is talking about the partnerships. And coming from an urban system, I think I was a little naive as to the level of partnership that you get ingrained in out in a rural community. And it's It's just amazing to me how it's, and it's a little bit different in each county because you have different partners, different service delivery areas. But it is a very cohesive network out in the rural communities, and making sure that we keep these counties and the municipalities within them viable economically. Our center, I think it was our last full program year, we served about 6,600 job seekers. We did that with a staff of 12.
Wow.
So it's we're quite a busy center. It's not a lot of population. Where we've got some of our counties that have about, I think it's like 1.2 people per square mile. But we do get a lot of foot traffic within our offices. We have two of the prisons, both Lyman and Sterling Correctional Facility. We do a lot of recruitment for, so we partner well with Department of Corrections, very ingrained with all of our human service partners, and our economic development partners are really one of our primary network customers. We do work with local businesses to provide recruiting assistance, doing on-site hiring events, really whatever they need to make sure that we get the right talent into their positions, and that they're positioned to then retain that talent, just so we stop the cyclical rollover of people attritioning out of positions, because that is such a time and money waster for our businesses to constantly be hiring and training. So it's kind of that matchmaking and making sure we get the right people to the right employers.
That's 6,600 people. That's a lot of people. It's really, really impressive.
It really is. And now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but from what I understand, when we have people attritioning out, it costs more money to train a new hire than it does to retain the employees we already have, right?
I certainly would agree with that.
It definitely does. Yeah.
Don can speak to that.
I heard a statistic, and I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I heard a statistic probably 12 years ago or so, and it was like around, I want to say it was about $52,000 for each employee turnover is what it would cost. And I have no idea what that would be in today's economy. Again, that is an older figure, but it's definitely very hard, especially for smaller businesses, which the largest percentage of what we serve out here have 25 or fewer employees. We do have some very large businesses with a couple thousand employees, but predominantly our smaller communities have small employee base, and when one person leaves, it is a much bigger impact to the smaller businesses as well.
That makes sense. Clarke, can you tell us a little bit about some of the key initiatives that the Rural Consortium has going on this year? Yeah,
Britta, and when I talk about this, I'll be looking at it a little more broadly. Dawn will be able to drill down a little bit, particularly some of the things, because her 10 counties are part of the Rural Workforce Consortium, of course, and we have 29 offices in 29 different counties across the consortium. So when you talk about that, you've got a lot of initiatives, a lot of things going on, and we have a lot of success stories. But broadly, sectors work is a huge part of it. Laura already mentioned that, the things that they're doing down there, healthcare, technology. We had a great technology project going on in Canyon City, and they said it couldn't be done. Why would you do that? But they're just said, well, because we need it. And so they're really making that work. Manufacturing, of course, is huge. So we've got pockets where that's is very successful as far as outdoor recreation. So on and on. We just got a lot of those activities, but they're most successful when business is leading the way. And so if we like to, we'll facilitate it, we'll bring resources to that, but it's when business gets excited about it, and that's when things really start to happen. I also was telling Britta as we came in that we had a real exciting event yesterday in Pueblo, focused on Pueblo's future is better together. Pueblo has been experiencing a lot of silos, and there's so much opportunity down there, and they've kind of been fighting themselves. But we brought 60 people together, and my director down there, Diane Escabel, and our partners with Colorado State University, with our Workforce Center down there, and many other folks in the community, with conversations around strategic doing as opposed to strategic planning. It's about doing and the actions that will come out of that. So that's maybe a whole nother conversation for another day, Britta. You're quite familiar with that. But we're real excited about where things are going in Pueblo. And then when you talk about initiatives, I just would, the challenge of the geography of rural Colorado. Dawn mentioned her counties. If we take Pueblo's population and Broomfield's population out of the consortium, we average 9.1 people per square mile in the counties that we serve, the 49 counties that we serve. However, probably 11 or 12 of those counties have 1 or fewer people per square mile. That human capacity is a real challenge to what we, and I will tell you honestly, a lot of those counties are just fine with that too, by the way. Let's not miss that. They're okay with that small. So don't get me wrong. But as far as economic opportunity, and then I would just finally say, when you ask the question about retaining employees, I think Laura will be able to speak to the fact that I always preach that it's a lot easier to keep a business than it is to find one to take their place. So business retention is a huge part of, I'm sure, I know that what Laura's work is down there. So those are things I'm excited about.
Dawn, do you have anything, some more specifics about what's happening in Eastern Colorado?
Just to take on what Clarke had mentioned, we do have very active sector partnerships in manufacturing that started the Northeast Colorado Manufacturers Association. So they're kind of out on their own. They've got a website. They do lots of events. Actually just got some great videos today to take a look at of some high school kids in Akron did a What's So Cool About Manufacturing video, and they learned how to edit video, explored a local business that actually restores old airplanes and makes propellers. And so it's really neat. It's trying to find that right opportunity to get, especially youth, and we're really focusing now on the 8th graders and getting them exposed to different careers within the community. We also have a Region 5, which is our lower 4 counties along the I-70 corridor, a health and wellness partnership, which has trained now, I believe, 28 local folks, because there was a residency requirement that was written into that in the healthcare realm, and just really taking a look at the grow your own concept. We struggle with losing a lot of our population in this area between the ages of 22 and 24. So they're going off to school and a lot of times staying gone. So we're really almost missing that entry-level workforce. So we're trying to be the catalyst to make sure that students are exposed to what type of opportunities are in their own backyard. And then that way they take a look at staying in the communities once they're graduating high school and college.
Yeah, if you don't know about an opportunity, it's hard to envision yourself doing something. That exposure is so important.
Exactly. And there's just a lot of wonderfully paying entry-level positions out here, taking a look at the trades, utilities, especially with our municipalities. There is a lot of opportunities, and trying to get schools to think a little bit differently about students that, could be the, straight A honor students really on that, traditional college track that may not be exactly where they want to go. So making sure that we don't just kind of pigeonhole our students and say, okay, we're thinking this group, we're going to expose them to this, and this group, we're going to give them this resource, and take a look at the whole and say, let's give them all this information and let them make choices. So we're out. We have staff in our schools, really on a daily basis when you take into account 10 counties. And just making sure that we're supporting our educational partners and making sure that the ICAP pieces, that workforce is a big part of that, and that we're providing our resources to help them meet those guidelines.
That's great. Thank you. Laura, can you share a little bit about the key initiatives within Region 9 that you all have going on?
Sure. I would say the main initiative is really trying to build our entrepreneurial ecosystem. When we talk about rural and geographic isolation, our region has no interstate, no rail, and we have some really famous businesses. One is Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory. They are based out of Durango, and they ship all their product nationwide from our area. And you guys know what the winter was like in terms of avalanches and snow, and so businesses get to a certain point where it's really no longer economical for them to be in our region. And so we really try to work with them on ways that they can stay. And then also, because we're kind of a tourist-based economy and people want to live in our area, they need to create their own job to stay in many cases. And so we try to have resources like accelerators, co-working facilities. We don't have an incubator, but we're trying to figure out ways to keep people in their communities and also creating jobs and hopefully hiring a couple other folks. And location neutral businesses are something that we look at. We have a lot of home-based businesses. So that's a real initiative that we try to do in our rural region. And then something that I know Clarke will probably bring up, but the census is coming up in April. And we are taking the lead in our region in terms of outreach and trying to make sure that folks realize how important, when you have limited numbers, that you are counted and how much funding results from those counts for the next 10 years. And so we try to work kind of on that regional level to make sure that we're not missing opportunities.
Wonderful. Yeah, so many different aspects at play, but definitely some challenges distinct to rural areas. So you all represent different regions from across Colorado. What do you enjoy about working with rural communities?
Clarke, we'll start here with you.
What I love most is the passion that rural people have for their communities. That's where the human capacity comes from. I work real hard to get around and know rural Colorado, and at the risk of sounding egotistical, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that knows more about all of rural Colorado than I do. Now, Laura knows her area much better, but I know Laura. And Dawn knows her area better, but I know Dawn. And so I know the people that I can go to for that. So the passion and enthusiasm just fires me up every time I get to be in one of those rural communities. So that's the best part about it for me.
Awesome. We have a couple minutes. So Laura and Dawn, if you want to each take a minute to talk. Dawn? Oh no, did we lose you? Oh.
I'm here.
Almost.
I think,
Yeah,
There we go.
we did cut out for a sec.
So yeah, just a couple minutes. So if you each
So-
want to take a minute.
go ahead, Laura.
One of you.
Sorry about that. So one thing I guess I just wanted to address is in cities are really thriving right now and rural is struggling. And there was an article in May 2017 in the Wall Street Journal that basically compared rural to the new inner city. When you think of cities back in the 80s where they had lower economic status, city residents, health concerns, outmigration, less economic and educational achievement, that's kind of transitioned to rural areas. So what I love about rural communities is their innovation in trying to combat all these challenges. And they do it, and it's just matter of fact, and they're going to get it done. It just looks different in every community.
Thank you. All right. Well, this is a fascinating conversation. Unfortunately, we have to take a quick break here on Connect and Collaborate. But when we come back, we're going to hear more about rural Colorado and how we can improve these systems, right? As Laura just said, rural is struggling a little bit, metro's thriving, but we're going to make this an even playing field. I'm excited to see what we have in store and what advice we can get from the three of you. So again, we have Britta Blodgett with Colorado Workforce Development Council, Clarke Becker with Colorado Rural Workforce Consortium, and Laura Lewis Marchino, Region 9, and Dawn Robards, Eastern
Perfect.
Workforce. Thank you. We'll be right back. Stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we're having a wonderful conversation here. We have our monthly check-in with Colorado Workforce Development Council, and today's show is talking about rural Colorado, which is exciting stuff. I'm learning a lot here today. So, Britta, if you would like to reintroduce your guests, I would appreciate that.
So we have Dawn Robards from Eastern Colorado Workforce Region, and we have Clarke Becker from the Colorado Rural Workforce Consortium, and Laura Lewis Marchino from Region 9. So we have representation from across the state,
Yes.
which is, I think, always fun and exciting. So we wanted to kick things off by asking, what do you wish people who lived in more urban areas knew about rural areas that they might not know? So we'll let Laura go first.
Well, I shouldn't joke, but the first thing I thought of is that you can always tell someone's from an urban area because their cars are clean. It's just amazing when you go to the big city. I mean, cars are clean and ours are not. So, but what I do wish, folks in, I guess, more urban areas realized was that a lot of people are here by choice to live in rural areas, and they've made a conscious decision. Sometimes I know based on some, statistics, it's almost like we're stuck. We can't leave, we have our farm or whatever, and that it's maybe not a choice to imagine live without, high-speed internet, or heaven forbid, to have a, Amazon to deliver overnight, or, some of the things we kind of joke about. But I do think that folks in rural areas, it's a conscious choice, that we think we're lucky. And when you do kind of discover that and someone from an urban area moves here, we don't need you to change anything or fix everything. And so there's a lot of kind of that the two worlds collide a little bit with some of our generational residents and folks that are new to the area. And it's not all bad. I mean, learning occurs, but it's just, that's one thing I keep thinking of when you ask that question.
No, that makes sense. That's a wonderful answer. Thank you. Dawn, do you have thoughts?
I do. After years of commuting into Denver from on the northern end of the Denver metro area, I just want to brag a moment and say the only traffic jam I have ever been in Fort Morgan was on Take Your Tractor to School Day. I have, if I catch the one light in the center of town, it doubles my commute to the office. But, joking aside, when I took this position and moved up, for my family, it was that opportunity to just really kind of try something different and kind of pull in and make our life a little bit more family centric. And that was a great opportunity for us. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And it was an adjustment coming from a rural area or from an urban area. Even though I grew up rural in Pennsylvania, it was a different tempo. And things, I think, things may move at a little bit slower pace, things like that, but it doesn't mean anything that comes out of a rural area is of any less quality. If anything, sometimes it means quite the opposite. You get a lot more of, especially the smaller businesses where it's a more hands-on product and things like that are coming out of a rural area. And we have some of our exports, even coming out of just Morgan County, we have one, it's a sunflower company. They trade heavily in the Dubai. And so it's, taking a look at even going into the Middle East and things like that. And that's a product coming out of Morgan County, Colorado. And driving through Morgan County, I don't think many people would guess that. Really taking a look at the economic impact in our footprint, especially with agriculture, but really broadening out into energy and those other areas, is we are really a big anchor for a lot of those funds coming into the state.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Clarke, do you have a response to this question?
Maybe just a little. I tell people that 59 out of our 100 Colorado state legislators have zip codes in the greater Denver area. Now, the good news is you'd never get 51 of them to agree on anything. So that's the good news. But if you throw in Colorado Springs to Fort Collins, nearly 80% of our state legislature is Front Range urban Colorado. And that's where the policy is made. And so our friends in rural Colorado have to work harder. I don't say that implying that they don't care about rural Colorado. They just don't know. And the things that you've just heard Dawn and Laura talk about, we have to work a little harder to bring it to them, to help them understand. And things like this opportunity to tell our story about the great things and the great way of life. And I truly believe, and this is the economic developer in me talking, quality of life begins with a good job. And so we need to work towards those, nurturing that talent and creating those good jobs in whatever way we can to make that quality of life for our folks in rural Colorado, because I think a lot of people in urban Colorado would really rather live in rural Colorado if they could earn a living there. And that's one of our goals and what we get to do every day.
I actually don't disagree with you on that. And you mentioned earlier the 9.1 people per square mile. It has its own unique problems, but that sounds amazing right now.
Yeah,
you got two cars at the intersection. That's a traffic jam in a lot of our communities.
Yeah, exactly.
So Laura, how do you see economic development and workforce development being connected in your work and in your region?
Well, on the most basic level, I think the fact that in rural areas, as in the U.S. population in general, is we're aging. There's definitely more deaths than births. And so when you're looking at workforce, that obviously plays a huge role when you talk about baby boomers retiring and who's going to replace them. And yet you have rural areas that you have usually your youth going away to school. Many times they don't return, or when they return, it's later. So that basic population concern is important and affects workforce. The second thing would be kind of the skill set gap, because what you see more in the urban areas is they tend to be trending towards college graduates. Most of the jobs tend to be for higher education, and the labor-intensive trades tend to be going down in terms of our young people wanting to go into those trades. And that seems that a lot of our agriculture kiddos actually are more talented in that area, and that's something that I think rural is going to be better at, especially down the road. And for I guess you call them the blue-collar jobs. It seems that seems to be where we will be able to thrive and achieve down the road, as well as that connection to education. We almost have to bring the education to our areas rather than let our kids leave to experience some of those opportunities, because we want to keep them in our communities.
Yeah. Dawn, you participated in the Economic Development Council of Colorado's regional forum in Hugo earlier this year. Why do you think it's important for workforce and development and economic development to partner together?
I think workforce development and economic development, we really do share the same mission. It may be worded a little bit different, and we may have different functions within that mission. But the way I see the two systems operating is we really are two halves of the same whole. And it's going to take that partnership to keep a lot of our rural communities, as well as the urban ones, I'm sure, economically viable, because workforce development is bringing those people in and getting them trained for things that may be happening through economic development, but also getting folks and talent in with employers for the jobs that they need today. And all of that goes a long way to sustaining the economy. Laura had talked about the aged population, and we definitely see that out here. It's put, a huge lean on our healthcare systems, and we're running a healthcare shortage when it comes to the workers. And it's no fault of the educational institutions, things like that. It's a lot of times it's difficult to find instructors to meet the demand of the folks wanting to enroll in the classes in our community college systems out here. But it's just, that's part of that economic development and workforce development piece is pulling it all together and just trying to figure out, who's kind of taking responsibility for what. We share a lot of information. There's great collaboration between most of my economic developers and our workforce system. And it's varying levels, because we really just kind of customize to what that county needs or what that municipality needs at that moment. And thankfully our systems are fairly fluid and able to do that and adjust and kind of be what we need to be in the moment. But we do have a better success when it's collaboration. None of our communities systems, whether it's a community service provider or Department of Human Services or economic development, workforce development, none of us are funded at a level where we can afford duplication. And I think that is one thing rural does amazingly, is really take a look at how do you leverage what you have. And it's not coming to a table and saying, hey, here's what I have to offer and not a penny more, or here's, what I can do it on effort more. It's really, okay, here's the end result. What can everybody pitch in with? And it is definitely very neat collaborative dynamic out here. And I think the strongest one is economic development and workforce development.
Great. Yeah, I feel like you're really highlighting how workforce development and economic development ensure that we have a talented workforce. Do you have any other thoughts, Clarke, about how the Rural Consortium is working to ensure that Colorado has the workforce it needs?
At my level and from a leadership standpoint and with our workforce boards, a big part of what we do is keeping an eye on the trends, the opportunities, the needs that are out there, and looking for those ways to respond to it. I do say all the time, when you talk about a talented workforce, if business isn't hiring, there's nothing we can do in our workforce system to help a job seeker. So that's why you hear me say so many times, business has to be our priority. And so staying on top of those trends, and Dawn, particularly in my shop, is terrific at that. She's a data geek, as she'll probably would admit, and she's a tremendous resource to me. But I think the global economy of the 21st century puts a lot of our rural communities at risk. But it's also a real terrific opportunity if we embrace it.
Great. Dawn, did you have any other specifics about how you all are working to grow the skilled workforce?
I think it's really, like Clarke said, and yes, I am a self-admitted data geek, it's really taking a look at what our local trends are, and not just on a 10-county regional level, but really taking a look at county by county, because each of our counties have a different dynamic to them. And I think we would be doing a disservice to broaden that approach and say, okay, this is what's going to work for all 10. But really taking a look at county by county, and what does that dynamic look like? Where are opportunities for some growth? Really also taking a look at what is it going to take to provide some wraparound services to maybe businesses in the community that are struggling. We do have a wonderful initiative starting out of Logan County to do just that, to make sure that we don't have businesses, especially businesses that are long-term stakeholders within the community, closing their doors. So really it comes down to the data. It's having access to the state demographer's office, to our LMI gateway system, to our NZ system, and being able to kind of pull all that information in and make sense of it and be able to tell that story out in the community. So that's what we do a lot of with those presentations, reporting to our chambers, to our boards of county commissioners, those type of entities, to make sure that everybody really has a very realistic view of what's happening within the community, because that's that first step into being able to be strategic and making those decisions on how best to ensure that we have a trained and ready workforce for when that need arises. Because the last thing we want is the need to be here today and that workforce to be 2 to 4 years out pending a degree. So it's really getting ahead of the information and trying to figure out how can we be most effective on that long-term basis and not just looking for the short term.
Yes, absolutely. If you have the need, waiting 2 to 4 years is not oftentimes a good or sustainable option. Laura, do you have thoughts about how you all are addressing your workforce needs in Region 9?
Yes, and I agree completely with Clarke and Dawn, because we are trying to always assess the environment, identify gaps, and look at trends and data, just like they said. The one piece that I guess I could add to that is we always encourage employers to look local first. Colorado is an in-migration state. I mean, we're recruiting our workers from outside of the state, and in a rural area, obviously there's less people, but that doesn't mean there's less percentage-wise that want to move into Colorado and work in our regions. And we just want employers to think about, yes, you might be able to get somebody that's amazing from Kansas or somewhere else, but who do we have in our community that's already invested here that you could hire especially in rural areas, and kind of do that first. And then if there's a gap that they identify, like, wow, we can't hire local because of some skill gap, then that's our kind of marching orders to fix that.
But making sure you're sort of checking in your own area first to see.
Yes.
Absolutely. That makes sense. And what are some of the challenges that you think, Laura, besides the inbound migration and kind of double checking in your own area to see if you have the skills that you need?
Well, one thing that kind of relates to that in-migration is I see the challenge, honestly, and, with the whole marijuana legalization, because we have a large amount of public lands, especially in our region. Our region only has 13% of our region that's private land. So we get a lot of Colorado kids that have been sort of brought up in the legalization era, and they can't get these jobs. They can't get federal jobs. They can't be a park ranger. They can't work for Mesa Verde unless they, are going to pass a drug test. And so we are starting to see that as a unique challenge with, are we educating our Colorado kids that, that could be impacting their employment. Also CDL drivers, the oil and gas industry, anything that's safety related. I just find that that's something we've had to really increase looking at, making that awareness that just because marijuana is legal doesn't mean you can have every job that is available in a community.
No, that makes sense. Dawn, do you have other challenges that you see out in eastern Colorado?
I think just kind of overall challenges. We have a lot of businesses that would be positioned for growth. We have a huge skilled worker gap, and that's only projected to get worse as we do have less millennials coming in than folks projected to retire within the next 5 years. Housing is a big issue. There's just not enough, especially with affordable rental housing throughout the region, for folks to take a look at opportunities locally and try the community out. And then also transportation, where we don't have any public transportation system. So it's outside of Logan and Morgan County anyway, but the it's just kind of getting that infrastructure pieces together in order to position us to really start taking that next step and enhancing the opportunities for growth that we have out here.
That makes sense. Clarke, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm going to stick my neck out here just a little bit, but I think I can say this as a former teacher, and our youngest daughter's a high school special education teacher, but I think there's still a significant disconnect between our education system and business. And systemically, we have to work on bridging that gap. When you look at the automation impacts, the AI, the artificial intelligence, the gig economy, those kinds of things, we work real hard at as we can, but the system itself, I told you, everything you've heard the three of us talk about is partnerships and collaboration, and that partnership is critical to creating that workforce that is so desperately needed within our communities. To what Laura's talking about, what Dawn has talked about, is growing your own. Well, if your kids come out of high school and they're ready to go to work because the schools have been able to do that, but I understand the challenges on our school system, but there still is a disconnect of thinking the way business is and what they need, as opposed to maybe just trying to help the kids. Anyway, you get where I'm going with that. But I do think that there's tremendous opportunity in strengthening that relationship and connectedness between business and schools.
Trying to continue to make those matches effectively of
Absolutely.
Skills and training, and how can we continue to improve what we have. So, Dawn, how do you feel like you all are working to help address some of these challenges?
There's a lot of conversations going on, and again, it's kind of separated out. There's a couple entities that will combine some counties, both on the economic development side as well as like an association of local governments. And a lot of these things have come up through there. And then outside of that, it's really taking a look on a county by county and trying to align some of those planning initiatives between counties where we can, just again, so we're not duplicating efforts. I think this is one of those things that really does truly take a village to bring it all back in and address some of our larger concerns. And I feel like it's on everybody's radar. Sometimes it feels like you're not quite sure where to start. I mean, some of these issues are pretty huge and impacting, and, taking a look at, just housing alone, you can't get affordable construction companies to come out. We've had a couple housing developments go in, and most of the purchasers were not locals. They're folks coming up with the urban sprawl that are commuting into Denver. So it's a multi-pronged approach, I guess, is the best answer to the question, because it's pretty tricky with trying to figure out where some of the solutions lie with these issues.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Laura, can you share a little bit about some of the successes you've seen in your community in the last year?
Well, I would say that a lot of that, it alludes to what Dawn said, but we feel like we try to serve in the connector role and involve and identify partners that aren't at the table and make sure we're communicating back. And that seems to have been really successful in terms of creating consistency between communities and making sure people aren't indirectly duplicating or, a lot of, I call it R&D, rip off and duplicate. I mean, if you have a community that's doing something right, then your next community can benefit from that knowledge and knowing that. So I feel like, in a way, we're trying to make sure people don't recreate the wheel at all, that if something's working, that they take that idea and run with it. And then, again, going to the data piece, being able to measure and show progress, I think really keeps people at the table.
That's wonderful. I think that just it highlights the collaboration and across communities, within communities, and definitely I know the CWDC is trying to help facilitate in the way that it can, just what you're talking about. How can we continue to learn from one another and build on those partnerships? John, do you have an example of a success from your community in the last year that you wanted to share?
I think really kind of building on, the theme of partnerships we're hearing a lot about today, taking a look at just our involvement out with the schools, whether it's going out and bringing in sometimes up to 30 different employers to come in and do a whole grade level of mock interviews and resume assistance and those type of things. And it's being that connector. I think Laura used that term on her last answer, and that's perfect because for us, it's providing that connection and making sure that business is operating within the schools. And to get to Clarke's earlier point of that disconnect. So that has been a huge success for us this year is getting out, really enhancing the relationship with schools. We've got, especially one of our career coaches especially has been a huge catalyst because he came from the school system and kind of speaks that language and has really helped make that connection in some of our areas that we've traditionally struggled with. So I would say just kind of overall, that's one of our big successes because we're engaging the kids, not just in high school. Like I said, we're really targeting we have 3 summer traincation camps coming up.
We really appreciate that. We are running out of time. I'm sorry, but those are great successes.
That's okay.
Thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure having you all on.
Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. Have a wonderful day, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.